The clock on the hospital wall showed 7:15 p.m. when Lisa finally finished her shift. Her feet ached from standing for 12 straight hours, and all she wanted was to get home to her husband, David. The emergency room had been crazy busy today. 3 car accidents, 2 heart attacks, and a kitchen fire that brought in a family of 4 with burns. Just another typical Tuesday at Atlanta General. Lisa grabbed her purse from her locker and said goodbye to the night shift nurses. The parking garage was mostly empty now, with just a few cars scattered around. Her white Honda Civic sat under a flickering light in Section B. She fumbled with her keys for a moment before getting in and starting the engine. As she pulled out of the hospital complex, Lisa decided to take the back roads home. The highway would be packed with rush-hour traffic, and frankly, she needed the peaceful drive through the countryside. David had been home from his military deployment for 2 weeks now, and she still felt like she was in a dream. After 8 months apart, every evening together felt precious. Her phone buzzed with a text from David asking if she wanted him to start dinner. She smiled and voice texted back that she would be home in about 30 minutes. The country road stretched ahead of her, lined with tall pine trees on both sides. This route was longer but so much more relaxing than sitting in bumper-to-bumper traffic. Lisa had taken this same road hundreds of times over the past 3 years since they moved to the area. David grew up around here and knew every back road and hiking trail. He said the quiet reminded him of his childhood before he joined the Army and saw the world. Now he was a Special Forces sergeant, trained for the most dangerous missions. But at home, he was just her David who made terrible jokes and burned pancakes on Saturday mornings. The sun was setting behind the trees, casting long shadows across the asphalt. Lisa rolled down her windows to let in the warm evening air. Summer in Georgia could be brutal, but evenings like this made it all worth it. The scent of honeysuckle drifted through the car, and she could hear crickets starting their nightly chorus. About 15 minutes into her drive, Lisa noticed a pickup truck following behind her. She first saw it in her rearview mirror when she turned off the main road. The truck was keeping its distance, but it had been there for several miles now. She tried not to think about it too much. Lots of people used these back roads, but then her phone started ringing. Unknown number. She let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again. Different unknown number. Then again. Lisa felt a small knot form in her stomach. Who would be calling her from 3 different numbers? She thought about answering, but David always told her never to answer unknown calls while driving alone. The pickup truck was getting closer now. Lisa could see 2 people in the front seat, but the windows were tinted dark. She pressed a little harder on the gas pedal. Just 5 more miles, and she would reach the main intersection where she could turn toward town. Her phone buzzed with a voicemail notification, then immediately started ringing again. 4th unknown number. Lisa's heart began beating faster. This wasn't normal. Something felt wrong. She thought about calling David, but she didn't want to worry him over what might be nothing. The intersection was just ahead. Lisa could see the stop sign and the old oak tree that marked the corner where she would turn left toward home. But as she slowed down for the stop sign, the pickup truck suddenly accelerated. Everything happened in slow motion and lightning fast at the same time. The truck slammed into the back of her car with a tremendous crash. Lisa's head snapped forward and then back. The seatbelt cut across her chest. Her car spun sideways and came to rest in a ditch beside the road. For a moment, everything was quiet except for the hissing sound of steam coming from her engine. Lisa's head was pounding, and she tasted blood in her mouth. She must have bitten her tongue. Her hands were shaking as she tried to unbuckle her seatbelt. Then she heard car doors slamming and heavy footsteps on gravel. 4 men in dark clothing approached her car. They weren't wearing masks, and Lisa could see their faces clearly. The biggest one, with a shaved head and tattoos covering his arms, yanked her door open. Well, well, well. he said with a cold smile. "Look what we caught." Lisa tried to speak, but only a croak came out. Her throat felt dry and tight with fear. She recognized these men. They hung around Murphy's Diner in town sometimes, always sitting in the corner booth, talking loud enough for everyone to hear their ugly comments about people who looked different from them. "Please," Lisa finally managed to say. "I think you have me confused with someone else." The tattooed man laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Oh no, sweetheart. We know exactly who you are. You're that nurse from the hospital, the one married to the soldier boy." Two of the other men grabbed Lisa's arms and pulled her from the car. Her legs felt weak, and she stumbled on the uneven ground. The fourth man, younger than the others with greasy hair and nervous eyes, kept looking around, like he expected someone to appear. "Jake, man, maybe we should just—" the nervous one started to say. "Shut up, Tommy," Jake snapped. "We talked about this. These people need to learn they're not welcome in our neighborhood." They dragged Lisa away from the road, through a gap in the trees, toward a small clearing she had never noticed before. Her mind was racing. David had taught her what to do in dangerous situations. Stay calm. Look for opportunities. Remember details. Try to find a way to signal for help. In the clearing stood a massive oak tree, probably 100 years old. Its trunk was so wide that it would take 3 people holding hands to reach around it. Jake pulled a length of rope from his back pocket. "You see," Jake said as the others forced Lisa to stand against the tree. "Your kind has been moving into our area for too long. Think you can just come here and take over?" "Well, we're going to send a message." Lisa's mind flashed to all the self-defense classes David had made her take, all the emergency scenarios they had practiced together. He was always worried about her driving these back roads alone, especially during her late shifts. Now she understood. Why? As Jake began wrapping the rope around her wrists, Lisa felt her Apple Watch vibrate against her wrist. David had given it to her for Christmas, saying it had emergency features that could save her life someday. She never thought she would actually need them. "My husband will be looking for me," Lisa said, trying to keep her voice steady. "He'll know something's wrong when I don't come home." Jake laughed again. "Oh, we're counting on Soldier Boy showing up. We've got a special welcome planned for him, too." While Jake and another man worked with the rope, Lisa managed to activate the emergency SOS feature on her watch. She pressed the side button 5 times quickly, just like David had shown her. The watch would send her exact GPS location to David and automatically call 911. "What's that beeping?" Tommy asked nervously. Jake looked around confused for a moment, then noticed Lisa's watch. His face turned dark with anger. "Smart girl," he said, grabbing her wrist. "But not smart enough." He ripped the watch off her arm and threw it on the ground, crushing it under his boot. But Lisa smiled inside. The message had already been sent. David would be coming. And when David came, these men had no idea what they were dealing with. Her husband wasn't just any soldier. He was special forces. He had survived combat missions in 3 different countries. He knew how to track, how to fight, how to disappear in the woods and strike without warning. Most importantly, he would do anything to protect her. Jake finished tying the ropes and stepped back to admire his work. "Now we wait for your hero husband to come rescue you. Should be fun." Lisa closed her eyes and tried to stay calm. David was coming. She just had to survive until he got there. David was in his garage working on his motorcycle when his phone started buzzing like crazy. The emergency alert sound made his blood run cold. He dropped his wrench and grabbed the phone with greasy hands. The message on his screen made his heart stop. Emergency SOS from Lisa. GPS coordinates. No other information. His training kicked in immediately. David had been in enough dangerous situations to know that panic was the enemy. He took a deep breath and looked at the coordinates. 15 miles northeast, deep in the woods he knew from his childhood. Why would Lisa be out there? Her normal route home didn't go anywhere near that area. He tried calling her phone, straight to voicemail. Tried again. Same thing. That wasn't like Lisa at all. She always answered his calls, especially when she was driving home from work. Something was very wrong. David ran into the house and grabbed his go-bag from the bedroom closet. Every Special Forces soldier kept one ready at all times. Inside were medical supplies, tactical gear, night vision goggles, and everything else he might need in an emergency. He changed into dark clothing and military boots in under 2 minutes. His phone rang as he was loading his gear into his truck. It was his old squad leader, Tony Rodriguez, who lived about 20 minutes away. Tony had gotten the emergency alert too since David had added him to Lisa's emergency contacts. "Brother, what's going on?" Tony's voice was sharp and focused. "Lisa's in trouble. Emergency SOS from coordinates in Mackenzie Woods. Her phone's dead. I'm heading out there now. Don't go alone. I'm on my way. Should we call the cops?" David was already backing out of his driveway. "Already did, but you know how long it takes them to get out to those woods. Could be 45 minutes or more. I'll be there in 15. Stay on the radio." David ended the call and switched to his tactical radio. He knew Tony would monitor the frequency. They had worked together for 5 years overseas and could read each other's minds in dangerous situations. If Lisa was really in trouble, he couldn't ask for better backup. As he drove toward the coordinates, David's mind ran through possibilities. Car accident was most likely. Maybe she had swerved to avoid a deer and gone off the road. The emergency SOS could have activated automatically during impact. But why wouldn't she answer her phone if she was okay? The other possibility made his jaw clench. Lisa was a beautiful woman, and she was often alone on these back roads. David had always worried about her driving home late from the hospital. He had taught her self-defense and made her practice emergency scenarios, hoping they would never be needed. 20 minutes later, David turned onto the dirt logging road that led to the coordinates. His truck's headlights cut through the growing darkness. The sun had set completely now, and the woods looked black on both sides of the narrow road. His radio crackled. "David, this is Tony. I'm about 5 minutes behind you. What do you see?" Nothing yet. Still about a mile from the coordinates. David's voice was calm, but his hands gripped the steering wheel tight enough to hurt. Then he saw tire tracks in the mud. Fresh ones. More than one vehicle. David pulled over and got out to look closer. 2 different tread patterns. One looked like it could be Lisa's Honda. The other was wider, probably a pickup truck. The tracks led off the main path onto an even smaller trail that David remembered from his hunting days as a teenager. It wound through thick trees for about half a mile, before opening into a clearing where local kids sometimes had bonfires. David got back in his truck but drove slowly now, lights off. If someone had hurt Lisa, he didn't want to announce his arrival. His night vision was good enough to follow the trail, and his truck was quiet when he wasn't pushing the engine hard. 3 minutes later, he saw light ahead through the trees. Not headlights, but the yellow glow of a fire, or lanterns. David pulled off the trail and parked behind a cluster of pine trees. He grabbed his gear and moved forward on foot. The clearing was exactly as he remembered it, about 50 yards across, with the old oak tree in the center where teenagers had carved their initials for generations. But tonight, something was very wrong with this peaceful place. 4 men stood around the big oak tree. David could see Lisa tied to the trunk, and his heart nearly exploded with rage. She appeared to be conscious and uninjured, but scared. Oh, men were talking and laughing like they were having a party. David dropped to his belly and crawled closer through the underbrush. At 30 yards away, he could hear their voices clearly. The biggest one, with tattoos covering his arms, seemed to be the leader. "She's been real quiet for the last 10 minutes, Tattoo Man was saying. Maybe she's finally getting the message." "When do you think her husband will show up?" asked a younger guy who kept looking around nervously. "Could be any time now." Tommy, you and Cole watch the trail. When Soldier Boy comes walking up here trying to be a hero, we'll give him a real Georgia welcome." David's jaw muscles twitched. These weren't random criminals. They had planned this. They knew who Lisa was and that she was married to a soldier. This was targeted. He activated his radio and whispered into his headset. "Tony, I've got eyes on Lisa. 4 hostiles, armed. They're expecting me to walk into an ambush." "Copy that. I'm in position at the trail entrance. No one's getting out that way. What's your plan?" David studied the clearing through his night vision scope. The 4 men had positioned themselves poorly. They were expecting him to come up the main trail like some amateur. They had no idea he had spent years learning to move through hostile territory without being detected. "I'm going silent for 10 minutes. When you hear my signal, call in cavalry with our position. These guys aren't going anywhere." David clicked off his radio and began moving around the clearing. The trees grew thick right up to the edge, giving him plenty of cover. His boots made no sound on the soft ground covered with pine needles. Lisa must have sensed something because she suddenly looked in his direction. For just a second, their eyes met through the darkness. David saw her take a small breath and straighten her shoulders. She knew he was there. The men were getting restless. The nervous one, Tommy, kept checking his phone and pacing around the fire they had built. "Maybe we should just take our pictures and get out of here," Tommy said. "This is taking too long." "Shut up," Tattoo Man snapped. "We're not going anywhere until her husband shows up." This whole thing was about sending a message to both of them. David had heard enough. These men weren't just criminals. They were terrorists trying to scare his family out of their community. But they had made one big mistake. They thought they were hunting David, but actually, he was hunting them. He moved to within 20 yards of the clearing and took out his phone. Using a secure app, he sent the exact coordinates to the sheriff's department with a message about multiple armed suspects holding a hostage. Then he checked his gear one more time. David had zip ties, pepper spray, a tactical flashlight, and his sidearm. But his real weapons were his training and experience. These 4 men were about to learn the difference between playing soldier and actually being one. Lisa was still looking in his direction occasionally, but being careful not to give away his position. She was tough and smart. David felt proud of how calm she was staying under pressure. The wind shifted slightly, and David caught the scent of cigarette smoke. One of the men was smoking, which would hurt his night vision. David smiled grimly. Every little advantage helped. His radio vibrated once against his chest. Tony's signal that law enforcement was on the way, but still at least 20 minutes out. Lisa didn't have 20 minutes to wait. David took one last look around the clearing, memorizing every detail. 4 men, positions noted. Lisa tied to the tree but alert and ready to move. Escape routes identified. It was time to go to work. David crouched in the shadows, watching every movement in the clearing. The 4 men were getting more nervous by the minute. Tommy kept checking his phone while Cole paced back and forth near the fire. The 3rd man, who looked like he might be related to Jake with the same build and angry eyes, stood guard near the trail entrance. Lisa hadn't looked in David's direction for several minutes now. She was being smart, not wanting to give away his position. But David could see she had been working on the ropes around her wrists. One hand looked like it might be getting loose. David pulled out 3 small rocks from the ground near his feet. In his army training, they called this battlefield misdirection. Make the enemy think you're in one place while you attack from another. It was time to put years of combat experience to work. The first rock landed in the bushes on the far side of the clearing, about 60 yards away from where David was actually hiding. All 4 men's heads snapped toward the sound. "What was that?" Tommy whispered, his voice shaky with fear. Jake held up his hand for silence. "Could be an animal, or could be our soldier boy trying to sneak up on us." David threw the second rock, this time even further to the right. It crashed through some dead branches and made much more noise. Perfect. "There! You hear that?" Cole grabbed a flashlight and started walking toward the sound. "Someone's definitely out there." Jake pulled out his hunting rifle and motioned for his brother to follow Cole. Check it out, but stay together. This guy's supposed to be some kind of special forces hotshot. Now only Jake was left guarding Lisa, and he was focused on the wrong side of the clearing. David moved silently through the trees, getting closer to Lisa's position. 20 yards, 15 yards, 10 yards. Lisa must have sensed him getting closer because she started coughing loudly, covering any small sounds David might make as he approached. She was still thinking clearly even after hours tied to that tree. David felt a surge of pride, mixed with determination. The three men were now 30 yards away, shining flashlights into the woods and making enough noise to wake up every animal for miles around. They obviously had no training in tactical operations. I don't see anything, Cole called back to Jake. Maybe it was just a raccoon or something. Keep looking, Jake yelled back. He's out there somewhere. I can feel it. That was David's moment. While Jake was looking away and shouting to his friends, David sprinted the last 10 yards in complete silence. Lisa saw him coming and got ready to move. David approached Jake from behind and to the side, staying in the big man's blind spot. In Special Forces training, they learned how to neutralize threats without killing when possible. David preferred to let the justice system handle punishment. He wrapped his arm around Jake's throat in a sleeper hold while using his other hand to grab the rifle. Jake was big and strong, but David had training and the element of surprise. Within seconds, Jake went limp and collapsed unconscious to the ground. David, Lisa whispered as he quickly cut her ropes with his tactical knife. Are you hurt? David asked while scanning the area to make sure the other three hadn't noticed what happened. I'm okay, just scared, and my wrists are sore. Lisa rubbed the rope marks on her arms. There are 3 more of them. I know. Can you move okay? We need to get you away from here. Lisa nodded and stood up carefully. Her legs were stiff from sitting in one position for so long, but she could walk. David led her to the edge of the clearing where the trees would give them cover. I need you to stay hidden right here. Can you do that? What about you? I'm going to end this. Those 3 guys need to be stopped before they hurt someone else. Lisa grabbed his arm. Be careful. They said they were planning to hurt you when you showed up. David smiled and squeezed her hand. They planned for some regular husband to come running in here screaming and panicking. They didn't plan for me. From across the clearing, Cole was calling back to Jake. Hey, Jake, we don't see anything out here. Maybe we should just... He stopped talking when he realized Jake wasn't answering. Jake? Jake, where are you? Tommy's voice was getting higher with panic. David had already moved to a new position. The 3 men were coming back toward the oak tree, walking close together and shining their flashlights everywhere. Perfect. When enemies group up like that, it makes them easier to handle. Oh man, Cole was saying as they got closer, to where Jake lay unconscious. Something happened to Jake. We need to get out of here right now. Where's the girl? Tommy asked, shining his light on the empty ropes hanging from the tree. That's when David made his move. He had positioned himself between the 3 men and their vehicles. When they turned to run, they ran straight toward him instead of away. From him, David stepped out from behind a large pine tree directly in front of them. All 3 men stopped so suddenly that Tommy crashed into Cole's back. Good evening, gentlemen, David said in a calm, steady voice. I believe you've been waiting for me. The 3 men spread out slightly, trying to surround David, but they were moving like scared amateurs instead of thinking tactically. David had dealt with trained enemy soldiers who were much more dangerous than these local troublemakers. You think you're some kind of tough guy? Jake's brother snarled, pulling out a handgun. We got you outnumbered 3-1. I can see that, David replied. Would you like to reconsider your life choices, or should we do this the hard way? Cole raised his flashlight like he was going to use it as a weapon. Tommy was backing away slowly, clearly wanting no part of fighting a trained soldier. Look, man, Tommy said with his hands up, maybe we can all just walk away from this. "That ship sailed when you decided to tie up my wife," David said. His voice stayed calm, but there was steel underneath it. Jake's brother made the first move, raising his handgun. David was ready for it. He dove to the side and rolled behind a tree as the shot went wild into the sky. The gunshot echoed through the woods, probably heard for miles around. Cole charged forward with his flashlight, but David was already moving. He grabbed Cole's wrist and twisted it until the man dropped the light with a yelp of pain. A quick push sent Cole stumbling backward into a tree trunk. Tommy decided he'd had enough and started running toward the vehicles. David let him go for the moment. One panicked man running away was less dangerous than 3 men trying to fight. Jake's brother fired another wild shot, this time closer to David's position. David knew he couldn't let this continue. Someone could get seriously hurt, and Lisa was still in the area. David pulled out his tactical flashlight and switched it to strobe mode. The rapidly flashing bright light immediately disoriented both remaining men. While they were covering their eyes and stumbling around, David moved in close. He grabbed Jake's brother's gun hand and pointed it safely toward the sky while delivering a quick strike to pressure points that made the man's hand go numb. The gun dropped to the ground. Cole tried to tackle David from the side, but David simply stepped aside and let Cole's momentum carry him face first into the dirt. "Stay down," David commanded, and something in his voice made both men freeze. Just then, sirens began wailing in the distance. David's radio crackled with Tony's voice. "Cavalry's coming up the trail now. Sheriff's Department and State Police. You okay in there?" "All secure," David replied. 4 suspects, all alive and ready for pickup." Tommy was still running through the woods, but David wasn't worried about him. The police would find him before he got far. David walked back to where Lisa was hiding. She ran to him and threw her arms around his neck. "Is it over?" she asked. "It's over," David said, holding her tight. "You're safe now." Red and blue lights began flashing through the trees as police vehicles arrived at the scene.